in just 4 words the impact of this visit. And as Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla explained, this global comprehensive strategic partnership is comprehensive in the sense that it is not limited to just 1 or 2 areas, but the entire gamut of the Indo-US bilateral cooperation, which figures in the joint statement, for instance. Then it is strategic, like we had always the strategic partnership, and then global, because it is concerned with international issues as well as bilateral issues. And as he explained in his press conference, the Foreign Secretary, that these are these issues, like those 5 categories which he described, they are covered by this global comprehensive strategic partnerships. They are defense and trade and technology, health and commerce, and then there are 2 more.
Defense, security, trade and investment.
Defense, security, trade and investment, and
yes.
Overall, do you think, before we roll out this a comprehensive report that talks about the bilateral pacts or the agreements that have been signed, very quickly, very briefly, do you think all this is really, if you look at the larger optics or the import of it, it's really come on expected lines, vis-a-vis trade specifically?
Well, on the trade, Mr. Trump's press conference just now, just about an hour back, he made it clear that on trade there are issues which need to be resolved, but he expressed confidence, and so did Prime Minister Modi in his statement, that we can move forward in these areas, and they'll be give and take. They can adjust. So I think on trade also, he said, Mr. Trump was quite explicit. He said that Indian tariff is very large. It's the biggest tariff, which we all realize.
Yes.
But then India's concerns also on these imports from the US about agricultural products and health and medicine.
Yes.
So
indeed,
there in this, then one of the agreements which has been signed about health today.
Yes, we will take a look at it.
Yes.
In fact,
So these are the areas where we can. So trade is difficult, but I think we can move forward.
We are making some sort of incremental forward movement.
In fact, let's take a look at
point to make.
Sure, we'd actually listen. We've prepared a story. Our correspondents have prepared this story on the India-US joint statement, actually, in a sense, because this was the statements made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President soon after the signing of agreements earlier this day in the afternoon. So let's take a look at this report.
These images at Hyderabad House indicate the level of ease shared by US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi before the bilateral talks began. It was vividly clear from the chemistry shared by the 2 world leaders that both countries are ready to move ahead on all the important issues. The 2 countries discussed extensively on all aspects of bilateral relations, including issues of cooperation in areas of defense, security, trade and investment. Both the leaders termed bilateral talks as extremely productive at the joint press conference, where Prime Minister Modi also announced the decision to upgrade the relationship to a comprehensive global strategic partnership.
ये फिर से स्पष्ट हुआ कि अमेरिका और भारत के संबंध सिर्फ 2 सरकारों के बीच नहीं है, बल्कि पीपल ड्रिवन है, पीपल सेंट्रिक है। यह संबंध 21वीं सदी की सबसे महत्वपूर्ण पार्टनरशिप में है और इसलिए आज राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और मैंने हमारे संबंधों को कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव ग्लोबल स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के स्तर पर ले जाने का निर्णय लिया है।
US President Trump also referred to the strong thread of Indo-US relations and said that the relationship between the 2 countries led by Prime Minister Modi has never been at the same heights before. Trump described the friendship as unforgettable, extraordinary and productive. The issue of terrorism and fundamentalism also arose in the talks, and both leaders resolved to work together on the subject.
Prime Minister Modi and I affirmed our 2 countries' commitment to protecting our citizens from radical Islamic terrorism.
आतंक के समर्थकों को जिम्मेदार ठहराने के लिए आज हमने अपने प्रयासों को और बढ़ाने का निश्चय किया है.
Both the leaders put special emphasis on taking defense cooperation to the next level. Prime Minister Modi said that defense and security cooperation between the two countries is an important part of the strategic partnership. Both sides have also agreed on a defense deal worth over $3 billion.
I know Prime Minister Modi will agree that this has been a very productive visit for both of our countries. Earlier today, we expanded our defense cooperation with agreements for India to purchase more than $3 billion of advanced American military equipment, including Apache and MH-60 Romeo helicopters, the finest in the world. These deals will enhance our joint defense capabilities as our militaries continue to train and operate side by side.
Leveraging their personal chemistry, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have forged Indo-US relationship into comprehensive global strategic partnership, which has great potential to transform world power dynamics. With inputs from Sudhakar Das, Newsnet Desk, DD India.
In fact, let me quickly take this question to Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, especially on the question of terror and terrorism. And when he says Pakistan, about, the mentioned vis-a-vis Pakistan and Imran Khan, calling Imran Khan his friend today, and the way the whole terror issue, ma'am, figured out in the final leg of the tour today, in the talks today, in the structured dialogue. Do you think President Donald Trump today managed to confront Pakistan on terror, realistically speaking? He mentioned Pakistan yesterday, he mentioned Islamic terror today as well, but did he confront Pakistan on terror?
I think he definitely conveyed a very strong message, because over the past 2 days, 1.5 days, he mentioned radical Islamic terrorism at least 3 times.
Yes.
And this was really something new coming from a US president on Indian soil. Secondly, he made it very clear yesterday when he said that a country has a right to secure its borders. He said that yesterday in Ahmedabad. And today when he said in the press conference, when he was pressed, that he has complete confidence in Prime Minister Modi in handling this issue. That was a very strong statement. That shows that he was also conveying a message to Imran Khan and the Pakistani government that just because there's going to be a Taliban deal over the next few days does not mean that US will just sit back in case the Pakistanis decide to make trouble for us on their eastern frontier. So I think all in all this was a very strong message. He cannot really confront Pakistan too much, because they don't want Pakistan to go under. They need Pakistan somehow to keep afloat.
But Ambassador Mukherjee, does it solve our purpose? I mean, pulling up Pakistan, because we've been very categorical about Pakistan not walking the talk on terror.
I think definitely not allowing Pakistan to go under does not mean that that President Trump is allowing Pakistan to walk the talk, because what is the talk he gave? He continuously talked about radical Islamic terrorism. He talked about Al-Qaeda and IS, and he continuously emphasized that. Yesterday he said that they are pressuring Pakistan to do much more to rein in Islamic jihadi groups. So I think definitely Pakistan is not walking the talk. But that said, yes, it is clear that it is part of the US strategy not to allow Pakistan to go under either, because that would create more problems for them as far as maintaining peace and security in the region.
Yes.
Ambassador Shilkant Sharma, the Prime Minister said that the deal on internal security will further strengthen cooperation against terrorism, and it's bolstered efforts to ensure that the perpetrators of terrorism take blame. So, how would you see the way in which there's an expression of confidence in our Prime Minister's leadership, and also the ability to tackle terrorism from the US side?
Actually, the point which Bhaswati made, the President said that Prime Minister is a very religious, a very calm person, but at the same time he's very tough. Now these attributes which he mentioned about Prime Minister, they are actually message that he is committed to work, but very calm, and then the whole question of terrorism, in internal security, in cooperation.
That's right.
There are dimensions of it. There is intelligence sharing which is already taking place. There is technology where the Americans have made quite a big stride about using technology to deal with terrorism. So in that area, if we have cooperation, that will be good for us, because they are, modern this industry 4.0. There's so much that can be done, and associated question of cyber is also there, because you see, cyber is something which is connected to every aspect of life now. So in that respect, technology, intelligence sharing, and then cooperation internationally, like in the international forums, India and US share the same positions. Like you heard that this Islamic radical terrorism, this word is indication of the US concern about it, which is India's concern as well. And it figures in the joint statement. And I think, I have not seen the joint statement, but the fact that Pakistan will have to do something about it, if it figures there, then it is an indication that the onus is not away from Pakistan. If it is indirect, then even then the Pakistanis are under pressure, because let's face it, there is no other country which poses us a terrorism threat. It is only Pakistan from where the terror threat emanates for India. So the pressure has to be on Pakistan. And in that respect, I think indirectly President Trump's speech and his expressions at the press conference, they indicate sufficient pressure on Pakistan. But bear in mind, he also said that they have lost a lot of people. They want to get out of Afghanistan. So in that respect,
is there a note of caution when he called Imran Khan his friend? Was it required?
He actually used the word that I think he said Imran Khan, and I mean, he has a good equation with the Pakistan Prime Minister. It may not be exactly the word friend, isn't it?
Here?
I think you should see it in the Trumpese, so Trump language. He always talks about everyone as his great friend. He at times, if you can, it will not be difficult to find out from his statements in Korea and Singapore or Hanoi that even for Kim Jong-un, he would have said he is a great friend of mine.
That should not be taken that seriously.
So he has a way of, actually this is his way of saying things good.
All right, let's move on. Beyond Pakistan, very quickly, ma'am, coming to you. He's calling Citizenship Amendment Act as an internal matter of India. And in the light of recent developments that we have seen in National Capital in the last 24 hours or more, and also at the same time saying that Modi stands for religious freedom of all sections, how do you look at the way Trump has dealt with that part of domestic politics that has been panning out in the last 24 hours in National Capital?
I think the most significant part of the press conference which President Trump gave and which I watched here was when the BBC correspondent, and you would recall that both BBC and The Economist, coming as they do from where they come, our former colonial power, have tried to sully India's international image between yesterday and today by trying to raise issues which have nothing to do with President Trump's visit or his phenomenal success. When the BBC reporter asked him this question, he said it was an internal affair, and he added that he has a great confidence in our Prime Minister, that he learned today about so much about religious freedom, and that he learned today that there are 200 million Muslims in India. That was his answer to the BBC reporter. And I found that very significant because the BBC reporter then did not dare to ask him a second question.
And do you think that has been, in fact, it has served as a bigger snub to the lobby?
Absolutely.
The lobby that has been trying to...
This anti-India lobby.
Anti-India lobby, trying to mislead and the entire false propaganda. If you remember, ma'am, during Article 3's abrogation of Article 317 Kashmir, the same sections of international media, we will not waste our important time, discussing that bit. But then the false propaganda then in certain sections of the media, again the false propaganda in certain sections of international media, and at a time when you have US President's phenomenal successful visit back home here in India, and the way he's dealt those questions today, that is something which sends a very strong message across the anti-India lobby, and the ranks of the opposition also have been trying to really make a issue out of whatever is happening in the last 24 hours and even prior to Trump's visit.
In fact, it conveys a very strong message because, for instance, today's morning's BBC coverage, which I saw, gave only a little bit about how successful it was in Ahmedabad, and the rest was all about what's happening elsewhere in India.
That's right.
Coming as it does from President Trump, when people know what kind of president he is, his unequivocal support for Prime Minister Modi, for freedom of religion, for the fact that there are 200 million Muslims. He said earlier there were 14 million Muslims, now there are 200 million Muslims. He said that in his press conference. Yes. So how would 200 million Muslims be prospering in India if they were being subjected to persecution?
That's
so
right.
I think it is one of the most powerful takeaways that India can take, and it's also a very powerful message to those few minorities who are trying to denigrate our image between yesterday and today.
Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee and Ambassador Shrikant Sharma, we're going to take a very, very short break. Mark, we take a short break, and when we come back, a detailed and comprehensive analysis of the business part of Donald Trump's visit to India is concerned. We'll take the discussion forward, and also remember there's lots lined up on the other side of the break as well. Please don't go away.
To read this?
More before we take a break. Amendment Act, the response, yes.
Cooperation in Indo-Pacific in the Quad, whether it's permanent membership of the Security Council, whether it's the NSG, or whether it's counterterrorism, US and India will work together because their strategic objectives are identical. We have the same interests, and therefore we are partners in securing international peace and security.
Ambassador Mukherjee, I'll just interrupt you for a brief, but I'm sure you know why, because we are getting these extremely spectacular visuals from Rashtrapati Bhavan, because, well, any moment from now, the US President will be, in fact, meeting President Ramnath Kovind at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. And, in fact, there's a banquet that will be hosted by President Kovind. And after that, President Trump would be departing from India later on in the evening today. But magnificent lighting, Rashtrapati Bhavan looking at its supreme best this evening. These are the live visuals exclusive on Doordarshan. Mark.
Yes, indeed, and we can see that the colors of the national flag are very visible. We can see how in the lighting in the evening, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, when it's lit up, especially since for the last month, ever since Republic Day, it has always looked very beautiful, including right up to Rajpath, right up to India Gate. And these are visuals from inside, which people don't usually get to see. So we are quite lucky that, we are able to see these visuals. And this would be, of course, a banquet. And it's a sight. It is, of course, a ceremonial affair, and I'm sure our guests will know a lot more about it, being in the service, in the foreign service.
How is it? I mean, how important, how critical are these banquets at the end of the day? Well, I'm sure you both must have been part of many
having been in many banquets.
Yes,
like Dr.
absolutely.
Sharma,
yes,
they actually are very impressive affairs. Like the morning ceremony, we have one of the most impressive reception ceremonies at Rashtrapati Bhavan, which would impress anybody. It certainly impressed President Trump. These banquets which are given, they actually there's a lineup of the cabinet ministers. Then there is some discussion which is informal, but on key issues. The seating plan itself is very important, and I was told by friends in the media that even the background music has been selected to suit President Trump's taste.
And
the food has been.
I
believe this is country music and jazz. This is what I was told. But maybe Dr. Sharma knows better than me.
The inside feel of such banquets.
Well, that music point is very, very, very relevant.
Okay.
But then they sit together, and there is an informal chat. But at the same time, there is a certain formality in the banquet speeches.
Okay.
So the banquet speeches are also a kind of part of the documents for the summit.
Okay.
Very, very significant.
Yes.
And
that's
in the
very
banquet
important
speech,
point.
in the banquet speech, again at the top level, they
So
assert what they feel like.
The aerial shot which goes right
relationship.
across of Rajpath, right up to India Gate. We can see this all in lighting, and of course quite magnificent, the lighting at this time of the night.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
And it is the high point. The banquet is always a high point, because the gentry of the in Delhi, they are invited. There's a very large invitation list. So the visiting head of state has the opportunity to meet across the spectrum. The people of eminence. And
it's one long table, one very long table.
Okay.
And it will go according to protocol on the list.
And they have
according
a
to the list of
handshake,
protocol.
and then they join the.
So there's a very strict protocol that is
very strict protocol. It's a very
followed by
long
some
table.
sort of informal tete-a-tete amongst the leadership.
Among the leadership,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
The banquet speech sets the tone, as Dr. Sharma said, but then there is some informal tete-a-tete. And along with that, what is selected in the menu is also very important. Because it is a kind of, usually it's a fusion food of the host country and Indian food, which is also very important.
So
I understand the same has been followed this time, both for the lunch and for today's.
So is this decided by the President's office, or is it decided by the Ministry of External Affairs?
It's decided by Ministry of External Affairs Protocol Division,
and
the
the
Chief
embassy,
of Protocol.
and the embassy.
Well, I was just, we would not, they are maybe unconfirmed reports, because there's so much chatter beyond the diplomatics of it. Well, I was just reading some reports where it talks about the widespread menu, Mark, which reportedly could be an array of vegetarian, and non-vegetarian delicacies, which has been specially and rightly so, ma'am, curated for the banquet dinner this evening. And this expansive menu boasts of Indian delicacies, but they say that the American taste obviously has also been kept in mind. And it might start with salmon fish tikka. On a lighter note, I mean, we don't know what's there, but some reports.
It starts with they said with a frozen orange consomme.
Okay.
If today's newspaper reports are correct,
Okay.
that's what I read in the newspapers this morning.
Okay.
But we will know once we get the details, which will come out. And I would agree with both of you that this is so spectacular that we are very, very lucky to see these images of the outside and interior of Rashtrapati Bhavan, actually.
Well, it will be interesting to see how Trump's really react to this another exhilarating view of Rashtrapati Bhavan this evening. The way the lighting has been done, because Motera was an experience for him. Ashram, Sabarmati Ashram was another experience for him. Agra was an experience in itself for him. He had a cultural experience all through the day and till the evening, last evening. Today, it was all hard business. And finally, all this is culminating here, this spectacular Rashtrapati Bhavan. So, any thoughts, both of you? Ma'am, first you.
Well, I mean, I think that he would be very impressed, because Rashtrapati Bhavan itself, the way it's looking right now,
The grandeur of Rashtrapati
is a very
Bhavan.
grand building. Symbolic of India's splendor and its history. So, and each and every relic which is inside has its own history. The banquet room itself is beautifully decorated with reflecting India's history, the decorations, etc. And every president has contributed to the banquet hall. So I think all in all, President Trump would have a very grand finale.
And President Trump's background is from the real estate sector, so I mean he would be looking at the building in a particular way.
Well, he spoke about the real estate part yesterday, Mark.
That's true, but
yes.
The point is that he has that, and even when initially there was talk that he didn't like the look of the White House because it wasn't up to the standards that he was used to living. So I mean one looks at these things. In the way that they have been saying it, this was the fact when he first went into the White House. He was a little concerned about it. Of course, it has a lot of history and tradition, and people need to be aware of that. And I think he must have got used to it. But it was not quite, the splendor that
it was different from his suite in New York City.
In that
Trump
sense,
Tower, yes.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But I hope he's not made to walk through the red carpet, because that's a long flight of stairs.
There is already a red carpet laid out.
Yes.
I think he
Would it be a problem?
He will have to do
But
that.
does he have any? I don't think
any problem. I don't think.
All right.
No, he's been taking the walk quite sportingly. He's like yesterday in
Absolutely.
in
How
Noida, he was walking
important?
around. And
Yes. Okay. As we stay with these live visuals, besides menu, the significance of it, Ambassador Mukherjee and Ambassador Sharma, both of you, like you just mentioned, you've been in personal capacity as diplomats, part of several such banquets. But then, are they really integral part of? Like you said, everything is documented. So this also means business. I mean, this is part of that business, is it?
Yes, absolutely. There's no such thing in diplomacy as a free meal. And
Free lunches or free
lunch.
dinners.
So the banquet is very much part of it. The banquet entails a formal meeting hosted by the President of India. There's a banquet speech that he would give, and President Trump would respond. The Indian cabinet and all who matter would be there to hear it. And you would find that in the informal chit-chat sometimes, some last-minute loose ends are tied up at the banquet speech. So if there is any loose end that we are not aware of, this is an opportunity to tie those loose ends so that you have a glorious finale to the visit.
In fact, if we could go back to that picture, if it's possible, of that bull that's called, it's got a very, very significant historic significance to it. Well, that's called the Rampura bull, and the Rampura capitals are the capitals of a pair of Ashoka pillars that were discovered in 1876. But like you just mentioned a while back, every pillar, every wall has a legacy behind it, has a history behind it, has a tradition behind it.
I am sure that whenever we've had these banquets, different heads of state have asked different questions about these relics. I'm sure this relic, which is so prominent and the camera has focused on it 2-3 times, I'm sure would attract the attention of our American guests. They would ask about its history, and as they would go inside, there are several more such relics which have been beautifully restored and beautifully placed in key niches inside Rashtrapati Bhavan, and I'm sure that it would attract the admiration and the attention of our guests.
Has the lighting always been like this, or this is something that we are seeing of late, this kind of lighting within the Rashtrapati Bhavan, ma'am?
This kind of spectacular lighting I am seeing over the last few years since our Prime Minister took over. Where there was some lighting before, but this kind of focus on the Indian flag and the Indian colors, etc. This is something unique that our Prime Minister Modi has brought in.
These are live and spectacular visuals coming in from Rashtrapati Bhavan just ahead of the banquet will be hosted in a while by our President. Rashtrapati Bhavan, in fact, it houses these magnificent 3rd century BC sandstone capital of Ashokan pillar. That's what the Rampura bill, ma'am, we were talking about, the significance of it. Ashokan pillar, and it is mounted on a pedestal between the central pillars at the forecourt entrance of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and that's the entrance that we are talking about. And as we go up the stairs, there you have the Rampura bull that welcomes you there. Yes, Mark.
Yes, I was just wondering, so there's such a lot of ceremony involved, and is there a very tight itinerary for it? It has to follow a particular, pattern within a fixed span of time that it has to finish.
Yes, indeed, Mark. You're very right, because I recall several such banquets, and I'm sure Dr. Sharma would have several memories, where when you were much more junior and if you were towards the bottom of this long table, you would be at your entree stage when the guests would be at the dessert stage, because it follows a tight time schedule, and in this particular case our guest would then be leaving for the airport. So the time taken, let's say, to serve 100 people at a sit down, even if there are a lot of waiters, it is actually, even the entire dinner itself is so spectacular. The manner in which the food is served and taken away, it follows, as you say, Mark, a very tight time schedule. It's all carefully marked out. The dinner is set exactly on time, and the guests rise exactly according to the schedule. The chief of protocol is there to ensure that nothing goes wrong, and then the guest is ushered to, in this particular case, I presume the motor carcade would then proceed directly to the airport, since his departure is supposed to be around 10 o'clock.
Well, that's the grandeur of Rashtrapati Bhavan in those spectacular lights, in fact, captured in Doordarshan cameras, lens of Doordarshan cameras. Rashtrapati Bhavan housing,
over there, we can see both of them. Yes,
Ashokan pillars are the most celebrated example of modern art, and we would be surprised if President Trump, or rather Trump's, sir, this is for you, would have lots of questions pertaining to the splendid architecture of our Rashtrapati Bhavan. And so these are the first visuals of Trump's carcade there. Approaching Rashtrapati Bhavan.
No, like yesterday he was at the Taj, and there were a lot of questions. The conversation with the guide were quite animated. They spent a lot of time there.
Yes.
So they have a lot of interest in these things, and at a different level, that bull is actually consonant with this bullishness which is there mutually between India and US. US is very bullish on India at the moment.
So first visuals of the carcade or cavalcade of President Donald Trump and First Lady, and the ceremonial reception or the ceremonial welcome would also sir, entail President welcoming them. Is it there? How is it really going to pan out? Because these are the live visuals, a bit of a perspective as we stay with these visuals there.
Yes, I think, but
the chief of protocol would accompany, would take him up, and then the president would greet him.
The hall.
Exactly. The chief of protocol would escort, like today morning, the chief of protocol would escort him up that red carpet, and there at the top he would be greeted by the Indian dignitaries.
And as you just mentioned, everything is
tightly scripted.
Tightly scripted, precision as far as time is concerned. The discussion, the informality, even the formality and the informality part of it is documented and perhaps integral part of the business part of this standalone visit of President Donald Trump. And well, like just Mark mentioned, on a lighter note, he was not very happy with the way White House, he saw White House, and perhaps there could be some sort of comparisons coming in. Mark?
Well, I think, many people have made these kind of comparisons in the past, but the White House has a tremendous history to it, and, I think that is precisely what one can't really compare the two buildings or the
So let's now also talk about the list of dignitaries, Ambassador Mukherjee. What happens next? There's going to be a warm reception accorded, warm welcome accorded, a very formal welcome accorded, which again is part of our tradition. And after that, the VIP list of guests. And if you could just quickly take us through.
The chief of protocol would then introduce President Trump to the Indian dignitaries, the more important of them. And after a very brief exchange, they would then be ushered straight into the banquet hall, where they would be seated. Then the ceremony would begin, which would begin with the banquet speech, which would be toast would be proposed, but I think that's now been done away more or less. So the banquet speech would be made by our president, and the response by Prime Minister President Trump, and then there would be some exchange.
Is it a Thanksgiving sort of a speech?
No, it's a political speech. It's a political speech.
Regular speech, yes.
It's written on both sides by the foreign officers of the countries concerned. So it's a completely political, diplomatic, strategic
So here you have President Donald Trump. They're arriving at the forecourts of Rashtrapati Bhavan, and of course accompanied by gorgeous First Lady. They've been in fact greeted by Chief of Protocol, and now they will be in fact taken inside, where officially and formally the reception, the ceremonial reception starts, and now they are slowly approaching from the forecourts of the Rashtrapati Bhavan towards the Rampurva pillar, the Ashokan pillars. Remember, one of the most celebrated examples of the Mauryan art standing there tall. That's the first architectural splendor that are going to welcome the First Lady and President Donald Trump. Exclusive visuals coming in from Rashtrapati Bhavan. There you see President Ramnath Kovind and the First Lady there greeting, the very, very warm handshake, a very, very warm handshake explains it all. It's a picture. Certainly. It's a picture that in fact sends out a message of comfort, a bonhomie, ma'am. And
Absolutely.
The lot that has happened between the two countries, the lot that has been transpired in dialogues between the two countries in the last 30 plus hours.
This would be the photo op of the evening all over the world, I think. This photo op just at majestic stairs of Rashtrapati Bhavan with our president and our First Lady.
Yes, the president of one of the oldest democracies and the presidency of one of the largest democracies of the world coming together. Yes, the largest democracies of the world, the largest and the oldest converging. And that perhaps, as we have been saying, and well, there you have. There you have.
And that initiative which President Trump took.
That's President Trump. In fact, that firm handshake translating into many words that India is indeed a friend, and this friendship perhaps, well, it's the message, Ambassador Sharma, that this friendship has now moved many notches above, and this is the pillar that we were talking about, Rampurva Bull. And here, I think
I'm sure the President is explaining.
Yes, the President is explaining in detail to President Trump the significance and the legacy of Rampurva Bull. Ashokan pillars, remember, are the most celebrated examples of the Mauryan art, and one of the finest examples of the Mauryan art is the Rampurva Bull that our Honorable President Ramnath Kovind is explaining to President Donald Trump and First Lady. In fact, Rashtrapati Bhavan houses many magnificent what you call sculptures, and this
right.
being one of
And
the
historical
yes,
relics.
historical, and this goes in fact back to 3rd century BC. It's a sandstone capital of the Ashokan pillar, which is also known as Rampur Vabul.
So
And in fact,
Rashtrapati Bhavan is a
yes,
museum in itself.
in itself, and gets the name from the site of its discovery, and that happens to be a place called Rampurva in Bihar. And as we just mentioned, this is mounted on a pedestal between the central pillars of the forecourt entrance, and now they are now moving in. The President Trump, as well as the First Lady, as well as our President Ramnath Kovind, accompanied by his wife. In fact, the main building, they are now making it into the main building, the central hall, which is also, in fact, they call it Circuit 1 also, because Rashtrapati Bhavan is huge. Ambassador
That is why I'm saying it cannot be compared to the White House.
Yes.
Because inside the Rashtrapati Bhavan are relics of our history going back to thousands of years. So it cannot be, it has a completely different historical significance. And it's been very beautifully restored over the years. So here I think again the President is trying to explain some of the relics and some of the heritage items that are on display in this part, very carefully displayed in niche areas as they proceed towards
this is the
main
central,
yes.
they're making way to the central hall.
From the forecourt, they are making the way to the reception area from where they will go to the
Central hall, and there you will
room.
have, they will have the dignitaries waiting for them.
They would have the dignitaries waiting for them right now.
The central hall, this is the central hall where actually the President gives away most of those awards.
No, that is in a different
that's a
part
different
of the,
central. That's not
part of the,
okay.
Actually, older times they used
It is
to
actually,
have some state living there. They used to stay in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and they have very excellent living quarters also for guest quarters. Absolutely first-class suites.
So this is the statue of Lord Buddha.
This is Lord Buddha.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, very ancient, I think.
So you have our President Ramnath Kovind explaining the significance and the legacy of one of these, most of the significant structures, and President Trump taking keen interest in knowing, very keen interest, ma'am.
And his wife also, the First Lady, both are taking very keen interest. In fact, they are listening in an absorbed manner to what our President is explaining. There's
And another photo
up. Yes.
But Rashtrapati,
this is also an opportunity for the people of our country to get to see, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is, as we know, like a museum. And it is actually revealing to all of us as well, because we haven't, nobody really gets the kind of opportunity to move around within a Rashtrapati Bhavan like this.
No, but Mark, it's open to the public every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Yes. That's how I took a conductor tour myself.
That's also good news for people.
And these are the live visuals coming in from Central Hall, where President Ramnath Kovind is in fact giving it a very personalized touch. We saw this yesterday. In fact, ma'am, this reminds me of Sabarmati Ashram visuals. You had the Prime Minister
spinning
personally, taking them. You have the Mahatma Gandhi's portrait there.
Well.
In fact, the size and the expanse of Rashtrapati Bhavan, I'm sure, has left President Trump and First Lady mesmerized, because they still aren't inside. They're still discussing amongst themselves, ma'am, and President Kovind.
And there's an iconic portrait of Mahatma Gandhi.
Absolutely.
It's very iconic.
We'll have to see if they will go that side as well, considering President Donald Trump's reverence towards Papu, Mahatma Gandhi. In fact, 340-room main building, Rashtrapati Bhavan, it can't get really bigger than this. And maybe when they talk, when this discussion will come up. Sorry, yes.
These chandeliers are very famous also.
Famous for?
These are very ancient chandeliers which have been restored. I'm quite sure, though I don't know, I don't think, maybe the White House has it, but this is not ready. This size chandeliers are difficult to find at this stage of restoration.
So 340 rooms, a room for every day, I suppose.
Spread over entire 130 hectares, which actually is approximately 320 acres. That's the presidential estate or Rashtrapati Bhavan.
It also has a golf course, and I think the U.S. president likes golf courses, but he won't get a chance to see the golf course in Rashtrapati Bhavan. Yes.
This is would you say, a very, very personal touch coming in from both sides. Do you remember, we've had numerous U.S. states of head, sir, coming to India, and whether it was Obama and even before that. But I think this in many ways is different. Donald Trump's standalone visit to India. It started with Sabarmati Ashram, keen interest there, spinning charkha. That's the visual that's going to go down in history. And even today, look at the way, with such an ease, with such a warmth, he went inside. He's patiently listening to President Kovind. He's taking keen interest in every architecture or artifacts there before he made it inside.
Absolutely.
Yes.
In Sabarmati, in fact, he must have been told about why Gandhiji insisted on the charkha, and it was to make India understand that we will no longer be exploited by the British.
What do you make of today?
This would have struck a key note on him when the BBC asked him this question, that these were our former colonial power, and we broke from them through the charkha. And then today to see these images, these magnificent images of our history and culture and civilization, when he has repeatedly talked about how impressed he was by our history and culture.
I'm sure the 4 floors of Rashtrapati Bhavan, around 340 rooms, well, he doesn't have that much of time to really go, I mean, the conducted tour of the entire Rashtrapati Bhavan, given the time constraint. But the way we've seen those 5-10 minutes of he making his way into the forecourts and then walking inside and then again. Okay, so again, these are the live visuals.
Right.
Third photo op, another handshake, this time more firmer.
This is the drawing room area,
Okay.
meant for heads of state. And this is normally where very private, relaxed meetings take place. So we would know shortly that this, I think, is the place where he would be meeting with key members or interacting. There is Ambassador Taranjit Sandhu, who's our ambassador there, and other
Mr. Shingla is also there.
our foreign secretary is there, Minister Hardeep Puri is there. So maybe they would have a very informal chit chat here before going on to meet the guests, because this again is in a drawing room format.
The First Lady and the high-level delegation on your state visit to India. Excellency, your first ever visit to India as President of the United States was eagerly awaited. It is an honor for us to host you. Excellency, the attention and interest which your visit has generated in India is truly remarkable. This shows the respect and goodwill of the people of India for you as well as the United States. Excellency, your participation in the Howdy Modi event had already won the hearts of millions of Indians, and the Namaste Trump event held yesterday has brought you even more closer to the people of India. Yeah. Excellency, it is the first time that such a large-scale reception has taken place to welcome a foreign leader. Excellency, you are a valued friend of India. Our bilateral relations have been progressing very well in your regime. India is deeply committed to further deepen our strategic partnership. Excellency, I once again welcome you. Thank you. A few opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and it's an honor to be with you both and with your representatives. And we did a lot of work over the last 2 days. We did a lot of flying to get here, but a lot of work, and very productive work. And we've seen a good deal of your country, and it's a great country. The relationship has never been better between India and the United States. And as you know, we're working on major trade deals and military purchase deals and a lot of other things, and very positive things. And I just want to thank you. Ma'am, I'd like to thank you very much. This is a great honor to have met you. And on behalf of the First Lady and myself and all of my representatives, this was a tremendous learning experience and something very special. India to me is a very, very special nation, and it's great to be with you. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you.
And President Donald Trump. Again, in fact, let's start with a quick takeaway, ma'am, as far as President Trump's opening remarks are concerned. He was saying that this sort of engagement is called drawing room format. He says that the relationship between India and United States, Ambassador Mukherjee, has never been better. I think that's a loaded statement, an extremely positive statement out there. He's thanked, he's again thanked India. He says, thank you very much. This has been, quote unquote, learning experience. That's Donald Trump, and India, calling India once again a special nation.
I think it was very significant that he said it was a learning experience coming from President Trump. He reiterated it's very special. I would like to add that this drawing room format we don't always have in a banquet.
Okay.
This drawing room format we normally have in the lunchtime talks in Hyderabad House. In the evening, it's usually we have a reception and we go straight to meet the guests and we go for banquet. The fact that we've had this drawing room format with only a few specific members on both sides also underlines how much India attaches importance and wishes to honor President Trump in Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Okay.
So I think that's an additional element that I wanted to bring. And I also wanted to say that our president also, in his remarks, was so warm when he said that first Howdy Modi and then Namaste Trump has touched the hearts of millions of Indians. This would indeed touch the heart of President Trump because Indian Americans are going to play a very, very crucial role in the months to come leading up to his re-election.
But he's also said that the words like respect and goodwill mark, he's called it a remarkable visit, our president, in his opening remarks. He said that it's been honor to host you, President Trump. You have won millions of hearts here in India. Well, that's a very, very strong statement, and rightly so. He's mentioned Namaste Trump, how exhilarating the entire event has been. Namaste Trump has brought us closer. That's how President Ramnath Kovind summed up the opening remarks there in the drawing room format of the engagement, as ma'am put it. So, would you like to speak something?
Well, you know, the point he makes there is also very, very significant. He said that a major trade deal is underway,
Yeah,
which is very positive because, you know, this sets at rest a lot of this doubt and uncertainty.
There is some sort of reassurance coming in time and again from President Trump. And why do you think this is happening? Why I'm asking you this, because as a run-up to this visit, much anticipated visit, he did say there's no large deal in pipeline. But in Motera yesterday, he talked about the large deal. And today, well, this is just the end of the tour, few more hours to go. He again mentioned trade.
You see, this is very critical for the success of bilateral relationship. The heads of state, they have a certain rapport, they have a certain mutual comfort level and trust. So when the lower level, like the principals, they negotiate, they do the dribbling and the humdrum work. But time to time, it is the confluence of understanding at the top which spurs them. So this is what happened when we were doing the nuclear deal.
Okay.
President Bush and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, they were one about where to go. But when we were negotiating at the level of the working level, there were a lot of things because the Americans were coming from a different area, we were coming from where we were going. So always there is a lot of distance to travel. But the head of state level, if you have an understanding and the kind of...
Do you see the remarkable difference here?
Yes.
The distance that we have traveled from Bush's era to Trump's era?
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest import of it.
So this will give a spurt to negotiations. And the fact that he repeatedly mentions that there's a big deal in the offing, I think we should pay heed to that. One should be optimistic about it.
Yes, Mark.
Right. Indeed. So Let's come back to what we can expect now at the banquet, because that's where our cameras are focused, and we have been through the rest of the day. We've given you live, almost ball-to-ball coverage of what's happening through the day. So this is in a sense where we are right now, we are looking at the spectacular image of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and this is the first time, in fact, that I think on Doordarshan we are actually talking people through what we are seeing at a banquet and how important a banquet plays. It doesn't get much media coverage, a banquet, in terms of a state visit. Ms. Mukherjee, you can tell us a little bit more about, why the banquet is part of the entire scheme of things in a state visit.
In a state visit, the forecourt ceremony and the finale, which is a banquet, are intrinsic parts of the Indian protocol and the honor that we do to a head of state. That being said, the manner in which this ceremony has been organized, the spectacular lighting, the very warm welcome which has been given by our president, who came all the way down to receive him right at the head of the steps.
Departure from protocol?
It's not a departure from protocol, but it's an extra sign of warmth.
Yes.
Then the manner in which he explained some of the historical relics there, then the drawing room format where they've had a small exchange, but a significant exchange. All this actually is part and parcel of a very important state visit, and it underlines the importance that India attaches to that visit when we go the extra mile.
Yes, if you could just play those visuals if it's possible. Well, President Trump, his body language, he seemed pretty much at ease. He walks in, he stops there, accompanied by First Lady. At multiple times, he indulges in some sort of soft discussion with President Kovind. First, he stops at Rampur Bull, and then he moves in at the Buddha statue, and then just adjacent to Mahatma Gandhi statue before he could make his way into drawing room, and then we had those opening remarks. And talking about the opening remarks, quick word from you, sir. Our president, well, he started with thanksgiving and also ended by saying that India values this friendship, and this is the friendship that is going to stay. And President Trump is close to billions and billions of Indian hearts. There's a message there.
Yes, this is the warmth which we exude. This has actually carried the day, last 2 days. This spontaneous warmth of not only the leaders, not only Prime Minister, President, but the Indian people, which we have managed to harness and showcase to him. It has gone and made an impact on him, and he likes it. He's a man who likes masses, and he's a man who likes to be, dealing with people. He's been a leader of that genre. So I think Trump is very, very impressed by this whole experience of his
of the
visit.
Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Yes.
And also, we are a democracy, and we know that, the power centers of the executive lie with the cabinet and the prime minister as the head of the cabinet. But as a system, we understand the role of the president as well. And I think this may be, for the American system, they need to understand our system, that this is a great honor, actually, that, that the president of the country is hosting the final banquet and to culminate a visit of this nature.
This is actually intrinsic to a state visit.
That's right.
Sometimes you have a working visit.
That's right.
Head of government or head of state comes,
right,
but only for a working visit.
That's right.
Which goes through the motions.
That's right.
But state visit has this banquet and the presidential role in that.
Right. And the importance of the president's role, because, the role of the president, one would think, is largely ceremonial. And we can see that, similar to, let's say, the monarch.
Yeah. And when his principals come and tell him that the Indians are tough negotiators, so he expresses that you are tough negotiators. But I think he has this, he expects this. On the other hand, Indians we have our own demands from the US.
Right.
So we'll have to see where they match. I think it can be. I'm optimistic.
So it's fairly, very, very successful.
Yes, absolutely.
At this point, let me quickly welcome Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, extremely Honor to have you here once again this evening. Well, well, last evening we were talking about how day one panned out, the exhilarating experience as far as Motera is concerned. Would you say day two has been equally exhilarating and exciting in terms of the deliverables, the business on table that we both countries have brought in, and especially that very, very warm reception accorded to President Trump and First Lady? How do you sum it up, the day two and the most important part, the business part?
Well, this visit for me has gone much beyond expectations. President Trump had come, before he came, he spoke about certain things, especially for him, trade is very, very important. We are talking of Harley Davidsons. The Harley Davidsons is very important. I don't know, why don't we give him his Harley Davidsons? But, you know, he has literally been bowled over by the scale of the reception, and again he...
And the grandeur of Rashtrapati Bhavan also.
Yes,
Bit,
but it, you know, something well begun is half done.
Okay.
From the moment he landed in Ahmedabad, he was treated to a riot of colors and sounds and music and dances. I don't think he had seen that, or anybody could have seen that. And then everybody told him that, sir, never in the history of India has this kind of a reception been accorded, which is very true. 22 kilometers lined up. And then he goes to the stadium, 125,000 people lapping up every word of what he said.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that it made his day. And it has sealed the friendship between two very influential world leaders, between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. That was very evident. He had wonderful things to say. He went much beyond what even a friend would say. Okay. So his respect for Prime Minister Modi, his affection for India was very evident. And then, you know, in any relationship or any visit, when we talk of the deliverables, they are the intangibles, long term, and then the tangibles, short terms.
These are visuals that we're getting in live once again from Rashtrapati Bhavan, and we can see that the US President will soon be entering the banquet hall of the Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Vice President, if he's there, he'll be ahead of PM.
Live visuals from Darbar Hall in Rashtrapati Bhavan. Prime Minister Modi there greeting President Donald Trump, which officially now can be called the banquet. It has started, accompanied by Vice President there. In fact, a while back, the national anthems of both nations were played out. Vishnu Prakash, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, can take us through the proceedings of the evening. What happens next?
Well, there is a bit of a change. I can see that. Earlier, the visiting dignitary, the head of state and our head of state and the spouses used to stand where they were standing. And there was a lineup on both sides in the order of seniority of the Indian side and the distinguished visitors side. And then they would one by one go across to the position where the two leaders were standing and shake hands.
You have Ram Vilas Paswan there, Rajnath Singh. Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think in the interest of time they have changed it, because instead of they going there, now the heads of states come to the guest lineup, and that way it is faster, because otherwise names were called one after the other. And on the other side you will find that there will be the American side. So after greeting the Indian side, then they'll go to the American side. And
yes, Union Minister Piyush Goyal, Foreign Affairs Minister there, Chief Minister Siddaramaiah, Smriti Irani, Union Minister Smriti Irani, Union Minister Piyush Goyal there. Yes, Siddaramaiah.
Yeah. So and after this there'll be our officials, and after the ministers. And
Chief Minister Yediyurappa, you meant.
Yes.
Yediyurappa is there.
Go ahead, sir, please.
So he will greet our chief of protocol is introducing the Indian dignitaries. So and when they go to the American side, I think that usually the head of state himself introduces the members of his delegation. So after this they will go across and he will introduce members of his delegation to our president.
So chief ministers in the line of protocol are, they come along with the cabinet ministers, is that?
They do, but in their own state.
In their own state they are above.
They are, I think they are above, right?
In their own states they are above.
They,
but in the center they are...
I think cabinet ministers, even in their state, they have a...
There is something, I mean, I forget my protocol list
the union
now.
takes precedence.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes. And usually the lineup is quite long. I remember one of the receptions that I went to on the Indian side, there were 136 people.
Okay.
So imagine 136 people's names were called and you walked up to the
it takes very long. It
took you so very long. Yeah.
But he has
so this is a smarter, I mean, it's a quicker way to do that.
From Karnataka's Chief Minister Yediyurappa, there Manohar Lal Khattar, and then you have also some of the senior union ministers there. And one thing, did you notice, President Donald Trump is in no hurry right now. He's taking keen interest not only in Rashtrapati Bhavan's architectural grandeur, but soaking in every bit of this experience.
No, he is clearly at ease. And I must also say he is not a person who kind of normally takes too much of interest in things. He is taking a lot of interest.
It's a personal interest in
very relaxed.
Very relaxed. Otherwise, and also for that matter, Houston, at least I was surprised. I did not have inside knowledge about how long will he stay. He stayed for our Prime Minister's speech. So he was there for 2 hours. And here also he's taking a lot now with the Foreign Secretary. And by the way, our Foreign Secretary, when he was a minister, he was the ambassador in Washington, was one of the first ambassadors who was invited to the Oval Office to be said farewell. So he has a very nice picture with President Trump before he left for India to be the Foreign Secretary. And then our new ambassador, Taranjit Singh Sandhu.
How important and how significant are these banquets in the entire gamut of diplomacy? And especially in this case, sir, if you would like to come in here, and also Ambassador Prakash, your thoughts on it. In this case, the maiden visit or the standalone visit of President Donald Trump?
Well, you know, the state visit means the visiting head of state is feted and he's introduced to all those people who matter. And so the VIPs and the whole gentry which are there in the capital. So it's actually, and he's feted, he's introduced, and they come and greet him. So this is the kind of a
You see some business leaders also
Azim
there.
Premji there
Premji,
also,
we could
yes.
see,
Yeah,
yes, and a line of business leaders. So there is a wide representation
I
at
have
the
been in
business
banquet.
banquets
community as
where
well.
even film stars were there.
What do you make of this banquet, Ambassador?
You know, Darbar Hall is grand.
Okay.
So the very fact that you invite a visiting dignitary to the Rashtrapati Bhavan and then to the Darbar Hall, which has a history where the world's leaders, dignitaries have been there, I think it is a gesture of respect that you show towards your visiting dignitary. Also, the idea is that, you know, after they have said hello to each other or greeted each other, they will be mingling freely for some time.
Your Vice President also exchanging pleasantries there. It seems to be a very free-flowing conversation amongst the cabinet and the senior union ministers amongst themselves.
Very much so.
As President Trump is now interacting with the captains of industry, there is a representation from the industry as well. Well, that also, in fact, adds more impetus.
Had already met them earlier at the business dialogue.
Yes, and their presence there, would you say, Ambassador Prakash, adds more impetus to the business component of the overall outcome?
Very much so. Where would you get an opportunity of interacting freely, informally, with the world's most powerful man? And you can clearly see that the businessman in him has come to the fore, and
he's spending more time
he's talking to, you know, and yes, because he knows many of the captains of trade and industry in India, and well, that is what he loves to do. So yes, it's a good, and that I think is Arun Puri, right?
That's right, yes.
That's Arun.
So and I think there will be some film stars also, as my colleague has mentioned, and let's see how he reacts to, because he talks of Hollywood to Bollywood, and so.
No, I don't see any this time, but
There'll be,
you know,
I think,
it
the
shows
pecking
the
order, there'll be
changing times. We have the president, our president, who otherwise was very stately in our when we were in the government, but now he also moves around freely.
Okay.
Because I have attended previous banquets where the president sits at one place and we all go to meet him, but he doesn't move around.
So times
Also,
have
would you
changed.
agree that it's a bit of a personality thing?
Absolutely.
Because this
Mr.
president that way has made and successive presidents have made a conscious effort to not have that those regal,
that stately
which is in keeping with the times of the
Absolutely,
day. You know, so.
Well, this also has been the overall import. You spoke about personalities. I think there you have in one frame, President Ramnath Kovind, you have in one frame President Trump, then our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, then you also have First Lady. All of them,
Shobna Bharti,
yes, exchanging pleasantries, and yes, then I think there is more of a business communication that's transpiring between President Trump and the captains of industry.
These are some of the media personalities as well.
Yes, yes.
And you know, after this, they normally they are invited to have a juice or something, and they move from the pre-assigned positions and mingle. So, because again, when they go inside to the dining table and dining room, it's a banquet room, that is. It's a long table where you can barely talk to each other because, you know,
that's right.
I think easily there'll be about 100 guests today, so the banquet table will have.
What's the capacity of the banquet table?
They extend it.
They
extend it or shorten it, and recently they have extended the capacity. And imagine 100 people are sitting there at the banquet table. So this is the only time when the guests can mingle with each other, talk to each other, and I think it's a very good way to do that.
So, is there a pattern, a certain system to this entire situation that we are looking at? I mean, or
yes, it's
made by President Trump that he knows them or he wants to know them?
No, he knows
some of them, huh?
He in his press conference with and his conference with the businessmen, he said, "Well, I know many of them," and he was calling them, on a personal terms.
Okay.
There was on the television about 2 hours back they were covering it, and he knew us, captains of industry.
That's music maestro A.R. Rahman. Yes. Well, one would wonder what are the notes that are being exchanged between President Trump and A.R. Rahman, who has he is not only a national icon. I mean, he is an internationally reputed Indian
He has won the
musician.
Oscar, you know.
Yes, internationally
and so
reputed.
he would have been introduced to him that he won the Oscar.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Yes, please.
That would be okay.
Go ahead, sir, please.
No.
So,
I have something to say. I'll say momentarily.
Please say. Please go ahead.
No. It is nice to see this lineup representing different segments of the society.
Absolutely.
And also, I must say that again that I have not seen from the visuals that I've seen of President Trump, seen him so relaxed. And he's not a person that I think I read and heard about who makes small talk. But he is taking, and his wife, she is very much, again, very relaxed in her element. So I think it augurs well for the relationship, because clearly he has taken to India, he has taken to Indians, he has taken to Indianness, I would say. So.
We were also discussing, on the lighter note, the menu with Ambassador Mukherjee just a while back. A very elaborate laid down menu, and this time around keeping in view the American sensibilities, but the way Donald Trump has always shown
what
his
is it, a 7-course meal, or how many
for
courses
India.
are there?
We would not comment on it, Mark, because we don't have it in front of us, but going by the reports in various sections of media, it's also a part of the formality.
It is very much so, but permit me to bring in another personality who is known for his love for his Indian food, and that was President Clinton and his daughter.
Okay.
They loved Indian food. They would, and first time, if I remember right, there was a Clinton platter which was introduced, and this time an Obama platter has been introduced by ITC Moria.
Okay.
Sorry.
Trump platter, yes.
Sorry for.
That's okay. Yes, please go on, sir.
Yeah. So and Indian cuisine in the U.S. is certainly occupying a pride of place, and I am afraid I don't know what the preferences are of President Trump, but I have been reading that some of the choicest Indian food will be laid out at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So, and now you can see that
the president is being introduced to the United States side, in the
and
U.S.
President Trump himself
Ross.
is introducing
Yes, right.
his team to our president and his spouse, the First Lady, Indian First Lady. And there is Ivanka.
Oh, she is dressed in a very gorgeous.
Very. And she has had a whale of a time. I mean, anywhere that she went, from the visuals, it was quite evident that she was very relaxed, happy at Taj yesterday and at Hyderabad
The
House
family
today.
element with Trump's at least yesterday.
Yeah.
At Taj.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, very much so.
No, and they are part of this American culture, which is fitness freak. The president, despite his age, he's so fit. He's taking this walk, and his wife, both of them.
Yeah.
They are all, and his team also.
So there you have live visuals from Darbar Hall of Rashtrapati Bhavan. It's a ceremonial banquet hosted by our President Ramnath Kovind. Now, this is what you see right on your screen, lineup of the delegation accompanying President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump introducing each and every member of his power-packed delegation to our leadership, to our President Ramnath Kovind, as well as Vice President.
So the places that are at the table, they are based on the Indian side and the U.S. side, or do they intermingle?
One Indian, one US.
Okay.
And the idea is also to have people that are dignitaries that they'll try to match either across each other or next to each other, people of the same status or the same designation, so that they can
have some sort of conversation.
Have more time
interaction.
to informally converse with each other. And right in the middle, of course, there'll be the president and our prime minister and the vice president and the visiting head of state and his spouse. It's a very good format for 1 hour or so, 1 hour 15 minutes. They will be able to talk. There will also be banquet speeches as they go in, which are read out, and the copies are made, which are a bit of a memento of on very nice paper in Hindi and English of the banquet speeches, which will be circulated before, and then that is read out. It's
so
a very nice ceremony.
Speeches are also documented.
Yes,
Sorry?
they are very much
Banquet
part of the-
speeches are also documented, and they are also form a component as far as the diplomacy part, the outcome.
Yes.
I mean, the concrete part of that.
It is a very much an important part because a lot of time and effort goes into a banquet speech, and that's also, as a kind of a wrap up. It's a kind of a thank you. It captures the sentiment that the guest and the host wants to reflect. So I think it does constitute an important part of the visit. And
Right.
the entire thing, as Ambassador Sharma was mentioning, is been very carefully done. The bagpipers come in. Their music is pretty interesting, pretty soothing. And the general, this is also a change, because normally the heads of state did not sit.
Okay.
But again, this has been an opportunity.
So this is all in the Darbar Hall.
All in the
All
Darbar
in the
Hall.
Darbar Hall.
And now you will see I think we will see a lot of bonhomie. Oh, I see. The other guests have started going in.
So first you had the drawing room format, and now you have a Darbar Hall format, if that's the nomenclature one can use here. Is it also departure from the tradition? Yes,
no, yeah.
But what I see is the top dignitaries are seated till the others get seated
That's
in the
right.
banquet hall.
Yeah.
So they wait, and then they take that, after everyone is seated, then they walk into the banquet hall and they take their places, which are the pride of place, obviously.
Well paced and well
Yeah,
timed. Prime
which are the
Minister
pride of
Narendra
place.
Modi, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu, First Lady, President Trump and President Kovind, accompanied by their respective spouses there, having an informal tete-a-tete there. But one would wonder what would be discussed.
We will soon
at
be
this-
listening to the banquet speeches, so I
Yes.
suppose we will get to
And
know.
we have distinguished panelists in our studios, former ambassadors who would in fact like to share their experiences, and what we would really like to know, the viewers would want to know from you and you, sir, how different has this been as an experience in Rashtrapati Bhavan? How different has this banquet so far turned out to be?
Well, it's the way it has been laid out is spectacular. It's the way because in the past the banquets which I have attended, I think that climbing the stairs was not part of it. They used to go around and then move straight into the Darbar Hall, so that time was less.
Okay.
But this has been done in full pomp, So there is a certain, and then Trump loves pomp, and he loves spectacle.
Right.
And you see, that's why he it's like he's in his element. I mean, if it one can put it like that. He's so happy, and
Right.
he likes superlatives. So so you have whenever he speaks, he speaks in that manner. So
But
all
wasn't
these
this planned by us?
Sorry?
This was planned by us?
Which one?
The entire event, the lineup, or it's discussed, the notes are exchanged?
No.
between the two sides?
The notes, we will decide who we invite.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is our prerogative. We invite the host to give their list.
Okay.
So there's an official delegation which is always included. Plus, either from Washington or from Delhi, we will, from the embassy of the US, will get their invitees. We indicate how many people should they give, how many names should they give. So that's how it is done. And of
And the
course,
seating arrangements, sir? I mean, that's
in
decided.
the order of seniority.
Okay. No.
But you will see that
No, you said that you match people according to
to an
and
extent possible,
to an extent
because their
possible.
official delegation
And that's
is of-
done in discussion with the U.S. Embassy?
No,
or-
not necessarily.
Okay.
Only the official delegation, because I think our ambassador and their ambassador will be seated next to each other. They have 12, they have 3 ministers, so if their counterparts are there, they'll be seated to each other.
Okay.
And then on the Indian side, there's obviously a very long list.
That's
So
right.
they don't have the American counterpart, just as when we go to White House and there's a banquet, the American side is much bigger and the Indian delegation will be of 15 to 20. So, but just in addition to what Ambassador Sharma mentioned, what I found very nice was the atmosphere.
Okay.
At Darbar Hall, it was relaxed, there was a sense of bonhomie, and which I think reflects the success of the visit, because now the entire proceedings are behind. It is
Satisfactory
Yes.
On a satisfactory note?
You're very
President?
conservative, I must say that.
Okay, super successful.
Exhilarating note.
Okay, I'm a journalist here. My job is to ask questions.
Yes,
So
yes,
after that satisfactory, there was a question mark, or super successful followed by
No,
a question
I think
mark.
it has been an exceptionally successful visit, and
Great.
I would that's how I would call it.
Exceeded all expectations.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's been a wonderful visit.
Right. But
No,
you know, the
yeah.
talk is about this trade deal, and you know, our Commerce and Industry Minister has spoken to the press, and he said that you know, we're moving towards an FTA, and there's a
said that?
limited stage or something. He has said that.
I'm so happy that he
Yes.
said that, because
But
that's what
the
happened.
point is that you know, that it's very early stages, isn't it? But and the Prime Minister and the U.S. President have given approval for whatever has been discussed thus far. You know, what are we actually, this at the end of the day, he also spoke about the $5 trillion economy. It's very necessary that, you know, India and the US work together. The Prime Minister has consulted with almost every ministry. He's consulted with the senior bureaucracy on how to achieve the $5 trillion economy. All this has been, you know, notified and put into the negotiations and the discussions with the U.S. So it's a very serious matter that is being discussed here. How do you view this? I think this is something that, you know, is probably not highlighted enough because we don't know enough. But this, I think, is a substantive issue that's come out of this meeting.
The trade.
The trade aspect.
Very much so. A, between India and the US, and B, for India itself, because right now our economy is 2.7 trillion odd, I mean, give and take a bit, and I think our trade is about 2.7 trillion and 800 billion. So that means about 33% of, roughly, of our GDP. Trade is about 33% of our GDP. But it has to be bigger, because the constraint so far has been that our own market is so large that we do not focus so much on international trade. But as we move towards being a $5 trillion economy and then a $10 trillion economy, we have to expand our manufacturing base, we have to expand our exports, imports. And who better than the US, with whom this year we will have, or last 2019 we had about $150 billion in trade, and we are looking at $250 billion by 2025.
Right.
So obviously we need to, both sides need to create an environment where we can trade.
Here's our President is speaking.
Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, and First Lady, Madam Melania Trump, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and namaste. It is an honor to welcome you, Mr. President, and your esteemed delegation on your first state visit to India. The past 2 days have been very special for us. Our people have rejoiced in the warmth of our friendship and the glow of our ties. Mr. President, our relations are deep and abiding. Today, the ever-expanding orbit of our partnership encompasses the map of every single human endeavor. As economic partners, we have come a long way. The trading journey that began in the early 19th century with ice from New England being offloaded on the shores of Madras has today blossomed into a robust economic partnership laced with expanding trade, innovative investments, and new age technology. As the world's largest democracies, we are deeply connected with each other through our people and their aspirations. The bedrock of Indian and American society has been hard-working, middle-class families, and that is what makes us understand each other instinctively. Over 4 million people of Indian origin have made America their home. They are a living bridge between the American dream and our vision of New India. Our bilateral canvas, Red Delicious American Apples, we will once again be reminded of the depth of our engagement and as much the prospects of our future endeavors. On that delectable note, Mr. President, I wish you and First Lady greater health and happiness. I wish the American people everlasting peace and prosperity. and I wish our friendship ever greater warmth and affection. Thank you.
Excellency, Your Excellency, I'll be coming in. Your Excellency.
I don't need that, thank you. Interesting that I feel so comfortable being with you, Mr. President, and my dear friend, the Prime Minister. We had such a tremendous 2 days, and I'm not even including the 18 hours that we flew. And that wasn't even bad, because I was coming to a place that I like very much. And you know, I've been to India before. Not as president, but I've been to India before, and we'll be back again, hopefully many times. But I feel so comfortable. I said, I don't want to read a speech. They gave me a speech. I said, isn't that wonderful? I'll tell you what it said. I love India. I respect India. The First Lady feels the same exact way. The First Lady and I talked about it, and this was a trip that we very much look forward to do. You know, I called up the Prime Minister. I said, do you mind if I make it till after the election? And he was not happy. He did not like that idea, because they had already put the signs up, right? He didn't want to be taking signs down. But we had a tremendous 2 days, as beautiful as I've ever had in my life, and I think I can speak for our great First Lady. We really had something special. Now, we've done a lot of business. There's a lot of orders taking place. There's a lot of things that are going to be purchased both ways, from India and from us. And we're going to have a tremendous relationship, a long and great relationship. We are right now, we were saying today, we are right now better friends than we ever were in the history of our countries. And that all has to do with relationship. And it's also nice to include you in that relationship, because I've known your Prime Minister now for a long time. We had a lot of fun in Texas, and it was an amazing day. They're still talking about that in the United States, and it was fantastic. But I must say that, you know, Texas is a big place, and it's hard to beat Texas. But what we saw yesterday with 125,000 people, and what they don't say, they do say it was full, it was packed. What they don't say is there were thousands of people outside trying to get in. And then we drove from place to place, and every place we drove, there were thousands, tens of thousands of people on the sidewalks waving and saying hello. I just want to thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, and your families. But this was a very, very special 2 days. And we'll be leaving at the end of this great banquet, this great meal. But I will say that we will miss you all, and we will be back. We will be back. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. Thank you.
So, well, he closes it by saying, we will be back. That's Donald Trump, the President of United States of America. Well, this was not scripted. It actually came from his heart, repeatedly calling these 2 days tremendously successful, quote unquote. And he also mentioned Ambassador Sharma and Ambassador Prakash. I love India. I respect India. And in that very friendly banter, he also
I think that's what he said.
Yes, he said, I think that I asked Prime Minister, can I also contest elections here? And he wasn't really happy with that idea. And on a serious note, he also summed it up by saying that we are better friends than ever. Ambassador Prakash, your thoughts?
Well, I do not recall, and as a spokesperson, I had the good fortune of attending a number of banquets, maybe 50-odd banquets that I attended. I have never seen this kind of delightful warmth and informality, where a visiting dignitary said, I do not need my written speech. I don't know whether he had it or not. And he spoke.
He said they gave me, but then I said I know what
Yes, as you very rightly said, he spoke from the heart.
Yes.
He said what he is closest to his heart, the kind of the respect for India, which he mentioned, his affection for India, his affection for Prime Minister Modi, which is heartily reciprocated, his interest in trade, the trade word again came in, and he certainly mentioned that relationship has never been better, and we will be back.
Yes.
Is very interesting, because he is signaling that he has a tremendous confidence that he will be back
as
as the president of the US. But overall, I think it was very endearing.
Right.
And this is very, even by the American standards of informality, it went beyond that. So I think that it shows how relaxed, how comfortable he is with his Indian interlocutors, and it's a good for the relationship.
So,
well, he's immensely pleased being here.
yes.
And actually, when I must say that when earlier we were watching, somehow the other thought came to me that, like Obama, would he come again? And he said it.
He said
So
we'll be back.
that was the indication of the bond that has been established today. Last 2 days, he's he bonds very well, and he is a very different personality. He's not like in the mold of his predecessors, because in the US, he does things on his own, like the way he doesn't read the banquet speech, or yesterday in Motera, he spoke on his, it was ad lib.
Okay.
So he speaks what he feels about it. He's very articulate in that sense, and still he manages to capture the essence of where he feels he has reached after coming to India. So that is a tremendous thing, Aman is using his words again. I mean, he inspires us to be superlatives, to use superlatives.
Right. I think what we'll do is we'll take a short
Yes.
break, and then when we come back, we'll put all this into context with our guests in the studio. So do stay with us. We need to take a short break now.
But
Bob, you start. I didn't.
So welcome back, and yes, let's turn to our guests once again and put into context the importance of the banquet speech. And the U.S. President, as we know, didn't use a script here. He spoke from the heart, as we were discussing. And he first also mentioned that he's come to India many times before, but not as president, so it's not his first visit to India. And earlier also in our discussions, we realized that he was familiar with many of the business community in India because he obviously has, met them in a business capacity or a professional capacity before he became U.S. president. So he's familiar with India, and he has been mesmerized by whatever has happened as, at the official and at the state level, and that he takes away a very warm feeling. He has mentioned that several times. He and his wife are overwhelmed by by the reception that they got, and he talked, of course, about the numbers, which is extremely important because that he had been mentioning before he came to from the United States that we are going to expect millions of people. He seems satisfied. He seems overwhelmed because people were lining the streets right from the time that his plane landed to the Motera Stadium, and there he saw 125,000 people. He said that, the media is still talking about it in the United States, but people, what they are not mentioning is that the people were outside the stadium too as well. And of course, if we talk about the millions of people who were watching on television, then that definitely adds up to several million people. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, so, in terms of size and scale, that's how we were discussing this visit to start with. This has fulfilled that, that concept of grandeur in terms of scale, would you say?
Without any hesitation. In fact, it has exceeded all parameters that I had, the mental parameters that I had set for myself. One has not seen this kind of a spectacular welcome that has been accorded to any visiting dignitary, and we have had several visiting dignitaries. But it's not the end mark, because now what we will see, there have been some iconic pictures taken at Taj Mahal, at Ahmedabad, Sabarmati Ashram, some of the visuals, some of the footage. They will become a part of the electoral campaign because,
And this as well. When holding hands, numerous occasions.
Sure, very much so. So, so we will see India being beamed into living rooms and boardrooms of in the US again and again and again. So right. I guess it helps the image of India. Plus, I think, and President Trump also mentioned that as India as a tourist destination.
Yes.
I think again these visuals will be carried all over. So by every stretch of imagination, it has been a wonderful welcome to him. He has thoroughly absorbed it, enjoyed it, and as he said, he is not likely to forget it in a hurry, and that was perhaps one of the purposes of laying it out for him.
Ambassador Shilkant Sharma, the showcasing of India, not only our iconic monuments, but today's the visual treat that we saw in terms of lighting and everything, which I think probably for the first time available, on camera for people, because you all have had the privilege of being at banquets, but not all of us. But we got to see it, and that itself sends the message that India is really a country that has class, that has the class that perhaps people didn't associate with us.
And the
for the international audience,
and the sheer majesty of the people, this democratic polity, it is able to put together this kind of a show. It speaks volumes about India, and he appreciates it. There is not a slightest discordant note. All the right notes he's making. So that shows he's overwhelmed, as it were.
Right.
In fact, we will continue this discussion. We're also going to talk a bit about the
activities of Melania Trump.
Yes. Before that, the portions of that brief speech made by our president just a while back, as well as President Donald Trump. But then let's also take a quick look at what happened in the afternoon today. Besides the business component, the softer side of the diplomacy was also at fore. We're talking about the First Lady. Not much is known about her in the sense in terms of media interaction. I can see Ambassador Prakash smiling at us. But today, when she visited those schools, the Sarvodaya Vidyalaya, she spent some time there, quite a bit of time there. She interacted freely with the kids, the tiny tots there. She was perfectly at ease. She spent some second time she took part in those activities, especially the happiness curriculum. And after that, she also spoke about this beautiful experience. Take a look.
US First Lady Melania Trump attended a happiness class at a South Delhi school. Excited students dressed in traditional attire greeted Melania as she arrived at the Sarvodaya Co-Educational Senior Secondary School. A band welcomed the First Lady playing bagpipes. The children welcomed the First Lady applying tika. The First Lady witnessed cultural performances by the students and was overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. The school was decked up with floral garlands and motifs to welcome the US First Lady. First Lady thanked all educators for setting a positive example for educators.
As I walked around, I was able to see how the concept exists in curriculum, in the leadership of the teachers, and in the spirit of enthusiasm of the students. Happiness curriculum. It is very inspiring to me that the students here begin each day by participating mindfulness. I also visited one of your primary school reading classrooms and learned about the reading program. Encouraging students to explore books of their own interest is very effective and increases reading habits and life skills.
First Lady also complimented the students of the school who gifted Madhubani paintings to her. Later she interacted with students at the school and witnessed various activities conducted as part of the happiness curriculum. She took a tour of the school and visited a reading room as well as an activity room for kindergarten students. She also saw a yoga session and interacted with the students. Jyotika Grover's report, DD India.
So there we saw the U.S. First Lady Melania Trump interacting with children in the Sarvodaya Vidyalaya in Moti Bagh, and she certainly had a very good time. One can clearly see that, and the children obviously enjoyed that moment. They will remember it for the rest of their lives. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, what kind of signal is this in terms of diplomacy these days, that activities for the First Lady, I mean, how do they fit in with the scheme of things in terms of the overall agenda of a visit?
The First Ladies have historically played an important role in almost every country. And the American First Ladies in particular have been taking up social causes, charitable causes, health issues, educational, women welfare. And they have, because of their stature and because of their interest and involvement, they have had an impact on the society. So it is indeed befitting that in this short time that she had in Delhi, for me, the most important thing was that she was taken to the happiness school. And that is the need of the hour. Today, because of the lifestyle, because of the competitive environment that the kids are in, because of the digital space that the kids spend so much of time in, the stress levels among the kids is huge. Mental health issues are huge. So what is very important is, I mean, look at the kids. They are carrying a bag, a satchel full of books with their back bent. So it is very important to introduce activities and features which enable the kids to relax, be happy. And here I think experiments are being carried out all over the world. So we are also, this was a pilot project that we have introduced, and we invited her to go there. She liked it. And I think it's about time that the best practices about the happiness for kids and or for the well-being of the child are studied and replicated. So that way it was, I think, a very good thing. It was something that she enjoyed. She had a bindi on her forehead.
Yes.
She looked very, she is a very elegant person.
She looked at home, actually.
She looked at home. And then I wish we can show the footage to your viewers of this little kid who broke into a spontaneous dance, and I think he gave the other girls who were dancing very well run for their money. I mean, he danced for a good 15 minutes, and the First Lady was absolutely smitten by this little kid, turned to him, clapped. So it was, I think she was quite happy to see the energy, the kids, the atmosphere. This is a practice that is followed worldwide, and it was followed quite effectively here.
Okay, we will talk about it, and if possible, we are going to play out those visuals of First Lady at that school earlier in the afternoon. But before that, let's also quickly dip in and quickly take a look at the business transacted today between the two countries. Remember, both leaders made it amply clear that there has been a forward movement at the ministerial level, and that is something which will continue in near future as well, as far as cooperation on regional matters and bilateral issues are concerned. Vis-a-vis the pacts that have been signed, we have a comprehensive report. Please take a look.
Before the arrival of President Trump, discussion on trade and agreement between both countries had begun. Tuesday's joint press statement by the two leaders made it clear that there has been forward movement at the ministerial level, and in the future this will yield good results.
पिछले 3 वर्षों में हमारे द्विपक्षीय व्यापार में डबल डिजिट ग्रोथ हुई है. जहां तक बायलैटरल ट्रेड का सवाल है, हमारे कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर्स के बीच सकारात्मक वार्ताएं हुई हैं. राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और मैं आज सहमत हुए हैं कि हमारे कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर के बीच जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनी है उसे हमारी टीम्स लीगल रूप दें.
Another major focus of my discussions with Prime Minister Modi is forging bilateral economic relationships that is fair and reciprocal. Our teams have made tremendous progress on a comprehensive trade agreement, and I'm optimistic we can reach a deal that will be of great importance to both countries.
3 MOUs were signed between India and America, including one letter of oil cooperation to boost energy ties. This letter of cooperation was signed between Indian Oil Corporation Limited and ExxonMobil India LNG Limited and Chart Industries Inc. US. The move can significantly increase the use of the clean fuel in the country and deepen the rapidly growing US-India energy ties. Both countries signed an MOU in the area of mental health. Apart from this, an MOU for the safety of medical products was inked as well. The bilateral discussions stressed on people-to-people contact. PM Modi also said that the most important foundation of the special relationship between India and US is people-to-people contact. He further said that Indian diaspora has played a key role in strengthening the US economy.
USA में इंडियन डायस्पोरा भारत के ये एम्बेसडर्स न सिर्फ अपने टैलेंट और परिश्रम से यूएसए की अर्थव्यवस्था में कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं, बल्कि अपने डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज और समृद्ध कल्चर से अमेरिकन सोसाइटी को भी एनरिच कर रहे हैं.
Prime Minister further said that India and US is also establishing new initiatives of partnership, innovation and enterprise emerging technologies of the 21st century. Both leaders also dwelt upon a whole host of issues during talks, including 5G telecom technology, situation in the Indo-Pacific, smuggling of drugs, organized crime, cybersecurity, maritime security. Both sides also agreed on having a new mechanism to tackle serious concerns like drug trafficking, narco-terrorism and other organized crimes. The US International Development Finance Corporation will be establishing a permanent presence in India, and America is committed to work with India to improve development. It was clear from the bilateral talks that Indo-US relations are set to be one of the most important partnerships of the 21st century. With Sudhakar Das, Bureau Report, DD News.
आप देख रहे हैं डीडी नेशनल, इंडिया का अपना चैनल.